math physics video. So there have been some quite uselessly snarky and crappy comments by the usual characters on the Amendum channel. So I thought I would respond to them here on the Draft Science channel because that's the appropriate place and whatnot. So mostly the beginning point. I'm just going to make a point on a specific subject and probably link it on the message board, and but there'll be other stuff added at as I'll read the rest of the shitty comments on other aspects and respond and whatnot. But yeah, it's really irritating. So Piro and this Mark Harbiter, just insanely, pointlessly rude. Anyway, you're too stupid to even understand how experiment even works. Talking about the Michelson Morely experiment. Michelson Morely is the way Professor Lewin says it, and Degrassi Tyson says it, and the guy at Yale says it, but Piro says it's Michelson. Yeah. All that matters is the time difference, retard. The fact that the mirrors are moving is the entire fucking point. I don't see how it's the point unless you know exactly how photons interact with moving electrons. And what do you know about that? What science do you have to offer on your knowledge of how that affects the emission of the new photon? Do you have anything? No, you don't have anything. Alright, well look, I'll read the little Piro part on the same subject. Look, I pointed this out in a previous video and didn't get any response to it, so I just figure I'll point it out again and see if there's anything else to be said. Let's see. 1. The Michelson Morely experiment. This is Piro. The Michelson Morely experiment, which you pronounce wrong, proves the issue. Right. Again, he pronounces it wrong. But regarding the bending, every long-distance laser in the world has proven it. It hasn't proven anything. Again, he keeps calling it bending. The laser doesn't bend. Objects move. So again, you just can't even get this right. Laser communication, LIGO, etc., etc., etc. Well, again, none of those experiments are focused on this particular thing to be looking for, and none of them have, again, you have no evidence that they have beams that are capable of measuring the thing you're after without too much noise in the signal. If the velocity, again, he's talking about the velocity of the emitter, bent the light, it doesn't bend the light. The whole point is the emitter shoots the light straight. You're the ones arguing that light bends. The fact that the Earth is spinning would mean the laser spot moved through the day. So again, he just keeps repeating the same thing. You keep pointing out how the laser diverges substantially from its launch point. Okay, even powerful lasers spread substantially. So it's needle in the haystack sort of thing. You're trying to find movement that's this small in something this big. Something maybe 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 times bigger than the difference you're looking for. And he'll claim, and it's just going to keep arguing, this is a good test instrument. We can detect that. He's just going to keep saying it in spite of the point you bring it up. Hey, your divergence is much wider than the distance of the thing you're trying to calculate. It's like having the wrong decimal points or something. You can't do it that way. That's so far from proof, it's incredible. It's plainly incredible. Well, anyway, so that's a different subject. But the divergence is the same subject. So this is the Michelson Morely. The last thing I had noticed about the flaw in this experiment. It has to do with beam splitters. So maybe I'll just title this Beam Splitters. Beam splitters work usually on a principle that involves a gradient, something with holes in it. So it's a half-silvered mirror, or a diffraction gradient, or something else where one spot is full, there's an empty spot, full spot, empty spot, that kind of idea. And when you randomize that in all directions, it essentially creates Newton's rings in terms of the pattern you could expect. And so what's happening in Michelson Morely is you have the beam splitter, and one path, okay, gets reflected. The reflected light does not get altered at all. The light that goes through is light just like going through the single slit experiment. It's going to create Newton's rings. It's going to be diffracted. There's going to be an interference pattern, if that's what you want to call it, but it's going to be Newton's rings. It's going through a diffraction gradient and it gets diffracted. So the problem with the Michelson Morely is the two paths aren't even, in that this beam, the one that goes through, spreads here and then spreads even more coming back. So the distance it spreads is this kind of distance, where the beam that reflects doesn't diverge on the way back, and it only diverges here. So it only gets refracted, well, I guess it would be going here. It only gets diffracted on the last leg. So this beam is diffracted both legs back plus the go-through, and the other beam is only diffracted for this much shorter distance. So the size of the Newton's rings image of the two beams is fundamentally different. One beam is twice, or maybe more than twice, the size of the other. Fact. So it has spread twice as big. The image is twice as big. And so when you superimpose those two on top of each other, and especially if you're only looking at a screen size that fits one of this size in it, obviously if this is a black center, it would black out the entire thing and you'd end up with just black. And you'd think, oh, look, it's all black, it's gone away, it's disappeared. When it hasn't really disappeared. You're superimposing a big fat image on top of a little image, and you're only looking at this centerpiece. And the inverse is also possible. But that's all you're doing. You're combining two. A beam splitter isn't what it's being implied to be. It doesn't create two equal beams going in two separate directions. It creates two very different beams heading in two different directions. That's the fact. The light that goes through is diffracted. It's going through the little slits between the material silver bits. The material silver is creating a diffraction grid, and the light is being diffracted as it goes through. The light that's reflected reflects clean and pure. No problem, no diffraction. So explain how that's taken into account in the Michelson Morely experiment. Show me the documentation where they take into account the fact that the two beams have spread fundamentally differently. One has spread more than twice as much as the other beam has spread. Show me where that's taken into account. And then do your preaching, cunts. Alright, so maybe I'll just read the rest of the Piro comment and the other asshole. Yeah, so I think that's all to say. I mean, there's other problems with Michelson Morely in terms of the moving mirrors and trying to figure out, again, as I pointed out, when you move a horizontal mirror, the difference is going to be where you hit on the mirror as the mirror moves. You'll hit different locations, and those different locations mean a different amount of time. So depending on where you're hitting the mirror is going to change the length of the path. Yeah. Sort of. I'm just trying to think of the movement part. I mean, obviously the length of these lines are all going to be the same. Okay, because this one's longer going this way but shorter going this way, and this one's shorter going this way but longer going this way. So you could just invert them and they'll all end up being the same length of line. Never mind that part. Like I said, just focus on the diverging light argument. Okay, this Michelson Morely did use half-silvered mirror, and a half-silvered mirror is a diffraction gradient. Alright. Alright, as you know, but are dishonest, I'm not saying judge a murderer about how you feel about the knife. Okay, well that's about the amendment video. But it doesn't, regardless, he's arguing that emotions are some sort of analytical tool, and they're never useful, in my opinion. There's no evidence that an emotion is anything but a conditioned response, and it's not necessarily an intelligent one. It's just a bigotry. My videos are to the class, of course. I'm not doing the trying to converse with the perverse thing anymore. So, you know, again, he has this, well, he's always been a fraud. He's had this fake model of what he's doing as something out of curiosity, and he hasn't been a propagandist for a philosophy, which clearly he has been. Alright, Huygens' principle says that you can model a wave as an infinite number of point sources along the wavefront, not two. Well, again, the point isn't about what Huygens says, it's about what Huygens produces. And the point is, the whole purpose of Huygens is to create two waves in the single slit experiment that interfere with each other. So what it produces in the end is just two. That's the truth. I already know this million wave thing. Well, it's not a million, it's an infinite number. So again, the very premise that you have a principle in physics that creates infinite number of something in this space. So they're claiming it's physically possible to have an infinite number of something in this space. That physics allows for that. So fuck Planck constants, fuck any kind of Planck notions. They say there's an infinite number of something inside that space. And they say that's a valid physics principle. That isn't just absolute made-up nonsense. It's absolute made-up nonsense. It's not, there's no evidence that that's a possibility or a fact. I mean, there's no evidence it's a fact, and there's not even evidence it's possible. Alright, the two comes from the fact that the internal part of the line segment of the wavefront after masking off by the two slits mostly cancel out. Well, except for the 2 point sources. And that's exactly my point. So once again, let's understand the 2 slit experiment is just 2 single slit experiments. Okay? There's no mystery here. It's 2 single slits. So the same rule applies. If this is Huygens, if Huygens in the single slit creates 2 waves that interfere with each other, then in the double slit it has to create 4 waves that interfere with each other. That's the implications of the principle. So explain to me how that's not the implications of the principle, and that you don't change the rules of the principle between the single slit and the double slit. And you change the rules based on what? The fact that it doesn't work if you don't. So you have a principle you violate merely because it doesn't work. And that's not cheating. The principle doesn't mean the same thing. You change the meaning of the principle in the 2 experiments, and somehow you haven't done something illogical. The fundamental principle is altered. Of course, that's duplicitous. It's double standard. By definition, that's a double standard. Alright, anyway. Making the math easier. Well, who cares about the math? The point is you're not doing the equations using the same principles, or the same equations for that matter. You're changing the premises to engineer the solution, the agreement. So you're changing the actual way you think things behave in the two experiments. Physics changes. So when there's a single slit, there's one kind of physics. When there's a double slit, all of a sudden the rules of physics are changed. That's the duplicity. Alright, people that actually do math often like to make the calculations simpler because it's hard work. You wouldn't really know that. Well, what I know is that first off, their math doesn't work. It isn't accurate to any kind of precision. And clearly, when you sit there and change what the variables mean, as in the variable in the single slit is the width of the slit, and the variable d in the double slit is the width of the impediment between the two slits, those are obvious dramatic changes for which you give no explanation for why those changes are made, except the math wouldn't work if you didn't change it. Shit. Okay. So I did the velocity. I'll read the end of it here. The Earth is spinning. We already did that, and it doesn't. You have evaluated your ability to ignore things to a reality that those things don't exist. So he's saying I say that LIGO doesn't exist, when we know that LIGO has absolutely nothing to do with measuring how much a laser beam vibrates. It has everything to do with this stupid interferometer stuff and and measuring the phase difference. So something they're not looking for, he's claiming they found. Just like the Hubble telescope, who hasn't produced a single image of lensing by our sun, even though it has a perfect atmosphere to look through, a perfect black sky to look around the sun and see everything swirling around in the wrong place because it's getting lensed by the sun. It can do it every day, and I'm supposed to believe it already proved it all and it doesn't matter, and so it's so provable that it doesn't even need to verify it. Or that the Hubble telescope is afraid of the sun. That this most precise image gathering, this thing can look all the way across galaxies, can look 13 billion years back into the past, and yet they can't aim it well enough to miss the sun? Yeah, bullshit excuse. Alright. And so anyway, that those things don't exist. So again, he's claiming I claim that LIGO doesn't exist. I claim that you've never used laser beams to do this detection, and you've never had laser beams coherent enough to do it with the accuracy necessary to actually do the experiment accurately. In your own little emotional crib, which makes you much more ordinary than you appear. And again, you're going to eat those words, cunt. So that's all I got to say to that trash talking. I will, like I said, if you'll get the piss you deserve. Also, you're a nihilist. You want nothingism. Yeah, that's right. I want non-tortureism. I don't want assholes like you to be able to do your sadistic torturing of sentient organisms for your own douchebag pleasure. Fuckhead. Message to the genius. These are all his disconnected thoughts, I guess. I don't think emotion and comfort and discomfort. You think things are feelings, curiosity, emotions. I think things like the feeling of curiosity are emotions. So again, yeah, so we fundamentally disagree. You don't understand anything about consciousness or biology. You think somehow feelings are ideas, and they're not. They're qualitative mush attached to symbolic representations of reality in our head. You can look at a tree and you can have some sort of feeling. Oh, it's a pleasant color. Or, oh, it's a pleasant something. Or you can have an unpleasant feeling because it looks like Richard Nixon's face or your face. I see your fucking ugly gob in the goddamn tree and it gives me the creeps. Now that feeling isn't anything called intelligent judgment. It's just the fact that I have memories and connections that have been made that are associated with that feeling. But it's not something intelligent. I'm going to suggest I am in the asshole galaxy. No, you belong in the asshole galaxy. Where's the evidence? I have told you the evidence for gravitational lensing. No, you haven't, etc. You say it's false. I say it's not evidence. You can say it's evidence, okay? You got this insanely preposterous, gigantic lens that's, 3 light years across, where the gravity has to be intensely strong to bend the light by Einstein's rules, by the mathematical rules. And you don't have any explanation for how there could be that much gravity in all those locations, in that giant location. Something, a smear this big on these photographs, that smear is maybe, I don't know, 5-10 light years across. And it has to be equal gravity across that whole smear. From what? From where? That's not evidence of anything. But that's the evidence. And my whole argument in the video was that you people draw conclusions based on weak evidence, incredibly weak evidence, and you draw hard conclusions. That's the argument I'm making, and you're just validating it. You're saying, yes, our evidence absolutely does suck, and we don't care. You see, what you forgot, emotionally caused, I didn't forget anything, is that I don't think that evidence is false. The point isn't that the evidence is false. The point is that it's weak. It's like somebody showing up with a crop circle photograph or a picture of a tin can flying through space and calling it a UFO. You don't fall for that if you're a rational person. You say, no, give me more than that. That's nothing. So I'm saying your evidence sucks, and your counter argument is, yeah. So I win, idiot. So that's the evidence. Again, so you just keep saying it. That's the evidence. The evidence is, yes, something that's pretty much physically impossible. Oh, fine. By the laws of physics. So, yes, if you can put fake dark matter, if you can invent fake mass to put in these fake locations, well, then maybe you can create lensing. But you have no explanation how this fake thing you just invented out of your imagination actually exists, and you have no explanation how it got into that strange position. It's not that I haven't given it. Again, I don't know what can any rational person say. It's incredibly weak evidence, and he's claiming it's good enough for conviction. How forgetful can you get? How forgetful can you forget? I mean, it's that, again, I can show the scientists not being able to explain the simplest experiment in physics and accurately, and you'll just pretend that never happened and believe everything they say. And so with the rest. But my comment also applies to evidence for photons. Well, the existence of photons, okay, is pretty strong. And all I'm saying is that all the other things that are obviously moving things are also tons. Light moves things. Quite obviously, things are being moved by gravity. Those are tons. Yes, they're not visible tons. So what evidence do I have to provide you? Where's your evidence for a bent space? You don't have a photograph of that. You don't have a photograph of any of the things you claim to exist. A neutrino or any of those things. So what the fuck are you talking about? I'm saying that the explanation for gravity as a pressure created by particulate force, similar to photons, is strong in the sense it perfectly satisfies everything that gravity does. All of the evidence fits that mechanical model. That was the actual point you placed in the void, to avoid. I don't even know what that means. As far as killing someone, whatever that part is, you have also failed to stop people from dying. Huh? Not people as important to you as June was to me, but people nonetheless. I don't even know what that means. But regardless, you're the reckless slob. I haven't done any of it recklessly or voluntarily. Whatever I've done, like feed feral cats, is because somebody else created the problem, not because I did. Not because I advocated for the creation of the problem, or the causes of the fucking problem. Anyway, alright, so let's do the other asshole. I guess it was down here, yeah. Just see if there's anything else I want to mention. We're on the subject of the other jerky subjects. Something that just occurred to me and I can't remember it. Well, anyway, I'll move on. But again, this idea of making fun of the idea of a ton theory, and again, I've explained where it does explain magnetism by creating just two different kinds of tons, and the fact that electrons and protons are opposite different things. You create filters, and those filters create all the forces that we know of. So the fact that my theory unifies where your theories don't is kind of a big plus on my side, retard. One you haven't accounted for at all. Alright, Mark, whatever, Harbiter. What a fucking load of steaming pile of dog turds this video is. Beyond Coulomb's law, your theory doesn't even account for the basic electric component of EM waves. Just why would I have to account for something that doesn't exist? There are no electromagnetic waves. There's only photons hitting electrons. So you show me a photon that creates any kind of wave. Show me. You show me an effect that doesn't involve an electron. An electron, the electrical thing, being moved. Show me something electrical where electrons don't have to move. Show me that. And you ignore that outright. Of course I do, because it's nonsense. You also completely ignore the existence of phase cancellation. Yes, I completely ignore the notion that light plus light equals dark. That doesn't happen. Light plus light can equal the light goes somewhere else. So in like the single slit experiment, for example, the dark spots don't mean the light canceled out. It means the light went to the neighboring bright spot. All the light still got out of the slit. It's just located in different positions, idiot. This is enough for your steaming pile of shit of a theory to fall apart. Well, it obviously isn't. You haven't even bothered to learn shit about that. I don't have to learn shit about it because I already know more than you by a long shot. You idiotic limp dick. Well, let's go ahead and have a contest, shithead. I bet my dick will leave yours in the dirty dust that it's used to being in. Pea-brained, pukey little piece of vomit. Likewise, I'm rubber your glue and such. You're too stupid to even understand how the MM experiment even works. So what I'm saying is, even the people who did the experiment were too stupid to know how it works. All that matters is that time difference, retard. What matters is that it's using diffracted light, and that's significant. The fact that the mirrors are moving is the entire fucking point. And again, I would argue that you're an expert on how moving electrons and photons interact. Okay, I don't think you are. Even worse, you don't even understand the distinction between ether and what an absolute frame would be. I think the whole idea of fields and frames and ether is stupid, because there are no mechanisms controlling anything. There's just little bits. The little bits are all there is. Now, if you have a whole bunch of little bits, you might be able to call it a field, but that's it. But there's no frames anywhere. Frame is stupid. Yeah, you actually don't, because you keep saying it was about the ether. I say that's why they did the experiment, shithead, and that's sort of important. Why somebody's doing something, their motives in doing the experiment, is kind of important. Just like the Ettenberg, or whatever it is, the guy who did the lensing experiment for Einstein. He clearly wanted to prove Einstein right. He had a huge motivation problem, a bias. And that's sort of important when you're judging how good an experiment is. So here's an experiment where he concedes it was pretty shitty, and he was incredibly biased going in. And you're thinking you've proven something. When he's conceded both the fact that the experiment sucked, in the sense that the results were crappy because of his instrumentality problems, and he had a bias. Wow, I am criticizing someone saying a true fact. Wow, how could that possibly make any sense? Okay, and again, I'm just arguing, you're saying something's a fact. I'm saying, what's your evidence? And then your evidence is what? You're not citing anything called evidence here. Now, anyone who has a point that the original experiment was about an ether, and if he thinks they are vindicated by pointing out, is a complete moron, because everyone already knows that. Well, it's a fact that's sort of important. Again, motivations of the people doing an experiment, if they are looking for something, that's called a bias, idiot. And obviously they found exactly the opposite of what they were looking for. But they did find something, which is also interesting that nobody pays any attention to, the fact that they found an opposite result even. Nothing said here is of any value, nor does it even approach any level of profundity. Again, these aren't arguments. So you think it's okay that most scientists can't accurately describe the simplest experiment in physics, the double and single slit. You think that's okay? Alright. Do everyone a favor and delete this idiotic video, you stupid, retarded idiot, and try again. No, bury yourself, shithead. I wish, you were not just an anonymous troll. I wish you had the guts to actually show your fucking useless fat face, so, you could be identified for future ridicule. You lousy, puke-talking, you're just a disgusting troll. Let's see. Keep up the pathetic game. You're shitting with false garbage content. So these are not arguments. If you had to talk to anyone who actually works with optics or condensed matter, whatever that is, you'd fall on your ass flat. Well, why don't you find one of these idiots? So he calls this an idiot scumfuck retard. Why don't you show me one of those idiotic scumfuck retards? Are they all so lame and weak that they can't defeat me with their magic powers? But go ahead and keep pretending to be someone fucking arbiter of truth. No, I'm making an argument and you aren't, asshole. As if no one has ever presented a valid counter-argument. And what was the valid counter-argument? Please, again, point it out. You say their conclusions are rock solid based on hard evidence. I demonstrate how the evidence in the two-slit experiment is nonsensical. Huygens is rubbish. The principle is violated between the two different experiments. That they can't even describe the fact of the interference pattern with the single slit honestly, except for Professor Lewin, who admitted it's not diffraction, it's the same exact thing that happens in the double slit experiment. It's an interference pattern. I don't know what the fucking screw loose fell out of your head. Well, again, it's okay for the highest paid and most notoriety physicists in the world to be incapable of accurately describing the simplest experiment in physics. Honestly, I'm inclined to even doubt that you even understand anything in biology or electronics. Well, you can do whatever you want, idiot. You're still not making an argument. I'm not going to go out of my fucking way and explain everything here. We're not explaining anything, and you're not making an argument for how you know space is bent. Not a single argument. Where's your validation that space is bent? What proves that space is bent? And again, if I say that The relationship between velocity and time dilation is merely a relationship that's very similar to the fact that if I'm dancing as fast as I can and somebody forces me to move in a direction, that I won't be able to dance as fast. That atoms are vibrating and are tied together with huge amounts of tension, and that if you move them, every bit of that tension will be affected by that movement, because it can't do the same tension dance if it has to go that way, because it's going to take time to move all the little bits that direction. No need for any bent space bullshit as an explanation. No extraordinary explanations necessary. Let's see. The fact that this was already explained to you, by who, where, and you keep using the same old outdated rhetoric saying the double slit experiment creates 4 photons, shows that you're not here to learn or even improve upon anything. Well, again, just explain that the hypocrisy. Huygens creates 2 photons, 2 wave-tons, in the single slit experiment that interfere with each other. Now, why then aren't 4 wave-tons created in the double slit experiment? Why do all of a sudden the rules change when I put 2 slits next to each other? Why do I get to change the rules? Explain that. Where has somebody explained how you get to change the Huygens rules? How you get to change the D in the equation from the width of the slit to the width of the impediment between the slits? How's that honest math? The fact that you think arguments are enough without any need to look further, I don't even know what that means. Arguments are a description of effects, and I've done more than just make arguments. I've drawn models. I've explained magnetism. Where has somebody else done that? Show me somebody else who explained magnetism, how magnetism works, why it works. Show me somewhere where somebody explained why matter has velocity, frictionless velocity, and why electrons don't. Anyway, let's see. The fact that you think your arguments without any reason to look further, and I mean actually learn the wave math and see if it works. Well, there's nothing to learn because it's not wave math, it's probability math. And, you know, I can play Susskind for you and he'll explain that to you. Okay, it's just probability math. There's no wave in the math, idiot. There's time and there's frequency and there's distances. There's no waves in the actual math, idiot. Points to the idea that you are the dogmatic piece of shit, you yellow piece of puke. Of course, I forgot that you're not even able to learn any of this shit. Well, I've learned enough of it to know that, to find the flaws in it. I've obviously paid enough attention to think about the interferometer and the beam splitter and to realize that the 2 beams aren't equal coming out, that one is spread more than the other. Show me who else noticed that. I've made points about polarization filters and how they don't evenly discriminate between something the right way and something the wrong way. They block everything going this way, and they block 10% of everything going this way. So it's a 40-50 relationship, not a 50-50 relationship. Show me somewhere where somebody else pointed those things out. I forgot you're not able to learn any of this shit. You're just watching Lewin with popcorn out, just like some idiot. So watching physics lectures from MIT, Yale, and Stanford is a waste of time by this idiot's notion. And I've watched hundreds of lectures. Okay, reading 10,000 Nature, I don't read Nature magazines because Nature's a pile of fake pseudoscience. isn't going to amount to a single fucking relativity book. Oh, and what relativity book should I read? Because frankly, they're all made out of shit in my opinion. There's no such thing as relativity, you idiot. I mean, obviously there's relativity in that this pen is now relative to me doing something, but obviously we're both moving on Earth, we're both doing some stuff that is absolutely we're both doing. And those are absolute realities, dumbass. There's no free velocity, shithead. Velocity is a real thing. There has to be a real imbalance created to give something velocity. And you just don't have it relatively out of nowhere. You have it quite absolutely. Not even a trillion Nature magazines is going to do that. Well, again, I've never even cited Nature magazine as anything other than just a rag. So how is this even relevant, you weird fuck? Alright, then he has to put a little extra on for no good reason. It's so fucking obvious this retard hasn't been spanked enough by his mummy. Yeah, well, it's clear that you've been fucking your mother. I fucking wish idiots like this would be dragged out naked and whipped in public for their criminal stupidity. Well, yeah, I guess you could be skinned alive and fed to dogs, and then we could make the dogs puke. And let cats eat it. I don't know. That's actually his idea, too, although it doesn't involve nudity. It involves cabbages instead. Geez, how witty. The fucking wish he had put in court just so this idiot would shut up. I've been in court, and I've shown judges to be lying scum, and I've had them shut up. So, ha. Asshole. So anyway, we will, he obviously can't handle the responsibility of making a counter argument, so we'll be done with him. Alright, anyway. Enough of the video. So yeah, they just keep claiming they have this hard evidence. I keep saying, well, where's the hard evidence of any of this stuff? There's no hard evidence. There's still lots of room for alternative explanation and clear indication that it would be really good to have an explanation that did actually unify something, that actually connected things together in a coherent manner. And that's where physics is totally broken and beyond repair, because they have a bunch of hard assumptions that they're unwilling to let go of, and they're incompatible with the physical facts. And I can play now, you know, I mean, I've been watching the, whatever his name is at Stanford, and he's starting to talk about annihilation, and he's talking about antiparticles. And he's overtly saying that so when an electron gets pushed out, so my argument would be the model of an atom is more like a static thing. There's charges between these things. So the electrons are repelling each other, and the protons are pulling them in. But the catch is they can't come in, because to come in, as you can see, the amount, the pressure being created pushing out would have to be, it would have to incur more out pressure. It'd have to get closer to these two electrons to get to this proton. So that's why it's stuck in that position. But anyway, the point being is that he's arguing that when this electron gets pushed out by a strong enough, high enough frequency of photons, you know, they hit fast enough to push it out, that this hole is an antiparticle. See, now there's no force being bounced back and forth here. So this frequency that was pushing this electron and keeping it here is now gone. So this electron now can move this way. And now this space gets wider, which lowers the frequency here. So it lowers the energy level of the whole collection of electrons. And they're arguing that that hole is the antiparticle. And he claims it's not really a particle, it's a hole. So, fuck you people. I mean, this rhetoric is that they can't even use this vocabulary in a rational manner. Because now an antiparticle is really the vacancy in pressure created by removing the electron. So the fact that you've changed the pressure gradient means you create an antiparticle. And is that honest rhetoric? I think that's just made to confuse. It's bullshit. It's unscientific. It's imprecise. It's crap. They shouldn't be get away with that shit. They shouldn't be able to call a vacancy an antiparticle. That's just fucking bullshit.